Hi, my name is Lucy, and this is another author spotlight. The author that I am going to be shining a light on today is the novelist Nicole Dennis-Benn. Nicole Dennis-Benn has written 2 novels. She's written a number of articles for various publications, but it's the 2 novels that I'm going to focus on today. The first one is called Here Comes the Sun, and it was published in 2016, and it won a Lambda Literary Award in 2017. And her second novel is called Patsy, and this was published in 2019 and won a Lambda Literary Award in 2020. Both of the novels were also on numbers of Editor's Choice and Critics' Choice lists, and they got other honors and awards as well. She's had rave reviews for both of them. Dennis-Benn was born and raised in Kingston, Jamaica. She now lives in Brooklyn with her wife and 2 sons, and she's the founder of the Stuyvesant Writing Workshop. Both of her novels talk about people from Jamaica, some still living in Jamaica, some living in Brooklyn, New York. Her work has been described as reminiscent of Toni Morrison, and I did read an article where she said that she took into account Toni Morrison's idea that you need to write the books that you want to read. And that's why she's written these 2 books that are about, in part, queer Jamaican women. I could talk at great length about both of these books. There's just so much that I could say. They're so beautifully written, they're brave, they're unique. And part of the draw, I think, of both of these books, Here Comes the Sun and Patsy, is how intimately you as the reader get to know Dennis-Benn's characters. You just feel like you really know a lot about them because of how well developed they are and how nuanced and how real they are. And so it's hard to feel like I'm doing them justice and the books justice without telling you everything that I know about these characters, or everything that I think I know or think I've learned from these books. But I'm not going to do that because that would be a very lengthy video. So I will just do my best to tell you some of the great parts of the books and why I think you should read them. So Here Comes the Sun takes place in Jamaica in a town called Riverbank. And this book really deals a lot with who Jamaica is for, and it has to do with the development of Jamaica and tourists coming in and taking over different parts of Jamaica, and then what happens to the people who live there and who are from there. And there's this great disparity between the wealth of the travelers coming to Jamaica for short periods of time and the poverty of the people who live there and have to work there and have to survive there. A big question in this book, I think, is really who owns Jamaica, and Jamaica itself features as a character. The main characters are these 3 Jamaican women, a mother and 2 daughters. The mother named Dolores and her grown daughter Margot, and then her teenage daughter Tondi. So this is a time in Jamaica where jobs have been lost among Jamaicans. There's this drought, but then these companies are coming in and redeveloping and building resorts. Margot is a 30-year-old who has the luck of working at one of the resorts, and she has a steady job there. She also has a auxiliary job there where she sleeps with a lot of the guests of the hotel. And in a way, this gives her power and it gives her leverage in what she can ask for and what she can do in her work. She leaves the hotel every night, but she doesn't return home to her mother, Dolores, and her sister, Tondi. Where she usually goes is to a woman named Verdine's house. Verdine is Margot's lover. This relationship is a large part of the book, and it is a large part of Margot's story, and it just shows the difference in how the women in this story approach the situations that they're in. Part of the money that Margot makes, a lot of the money that Margot makes, is going to help her sister, Tondi, who's 15 years old, get a good education. This is a dream of Margot's mother, Dolores, and of Margot herself. And they work to put food on the table, and they work mostly to advance Tondi. Margot, in a sense, has sacrificed her own dreams in order to advance her sister's future. It seems like maybe her sister's got a better chance at a better future. Part of this has to do with the fact that Tondi has lighter skin than Margot. Colorism is another big part of this book. It's another factor among the Jamaicans, how they consider self-worth and where a lot of self-hatred comes up. Margot's life in general is actually a series of sacrifices. She, as I said, earns extra money by having sex with the guests at the hotel. One thing that's interesting about this transaction in the book is that it's not something that's demeaning to Margot. She's willing to offer an experience to tourists in a way like satisfying curiosity that they might have about the island, and also get paid for this. She gets good money, and in a way she feels like it's part of this tour experience. She's a tour guide of her own body. And then outside of that, she is in this relationship with Verdine. Verdine is an interesting character. She has been shunned in general by the folks of Riverbank. They leave dead animals on her lawn. They write things on her house because of the fact that she was once caught sleeping with another woman. She was sent away at the time that she was found in that relationship, but she has come back, and she's just very much cast away from the town in general. Margot and Verdine keep their relationship secret. This is something that is really more important to Margot than Verdine. Margot goes through a lot to guard this privacy for a number of reasons, but one of which is that she's really trying to advance herself in this world of resorts and to have a different kind of job than the jobs that most women have there. So in order to guard her privacy and in order to advance herself, some of her actions are questionable around this. She is willing to blackmail people. She is willing to start rumors about another colleague's sexuality in order to get ahead of that colleague, casting this net of homophobia around that colleague, and yet she's in a relationship with a woman. And it's really about wanting to be able to run a new resort that's coming in. And this is the goal that she has set her sights on. And this is a way she can get ahead. She doesn't have a lot of choices about how she can get ahead. This book is told in multiple points of view. So we get Margot's point of view, we get Tandi's point of view, and we get Dolores's point of view. And it's really interesting to get these generational points of view. Though Margot and Tandi are sisters, they're 15 years apart. So they feel like they're of different generations. Tandi, who Dolores and Margot are putting all this money and time into, is actually skipping school to spend time with a boy that she's falling in love with. And we get more and more of a sense of why she's doing that when we're getting parts of the story from her point of view. And as we get to hear more about Margot's relationship with her own mother, Dolores, we realize that Dolores really failed Margot as a mother. Now they're both putting everything into Tandi, but there is this hereditary trauma. Each of these women has experienced sexual assault, and they have been unable to pass on that knowledge or share any of that with each other. And so nothing is resolved. The cycle isn't stopped before lasting damage is done. There's this cycle of exploitation that runs throughout this family, but it also is carried out past it in part by Margot. Margot ends up running a prostitution ring at the hotel, again, in order to be able to advance herself. And she's exploiting these women by doing so. Margot's not the only one keeping secrets. Tandi is keeping secret the fact that she's skipping school, that she's seeing this boy. Dolores has not been completely honest with Margot about choices that she made around Margot's childhood that were really, really damaging. She believed she was doing a good job in some ways to be a mother to Margot, but, and this is a quote from the book, for some reason, the joy and innocence in her daughter only infuriated her. Had Margot known what life could become for girls like her, she would never grin like that. And this is that sense of Dolores has had this traumatic thing happen to her rather than try to prevent a traumatic thing from happening to Margot by sharing the experience or by talking about the possibility. She is angry at Margot because Margot can't see how that would happen to her, and so doesn't live life cautiously and grimly enough to satisfy Dolores. And as you can see already from what I'm trying to tell you of this story, there is a lot to these characters. Dennis-Benn does not shy away from writing characters who show all of their sides. They make some morally questionable decisions. But because we're getting their points of view and because she's written them so carefully, we are able to see how difficult it is to be these women and to get what they want. Part of their decision-making process comes from the fact that this is a post-colonial society. Jamaica at this point is somewhere where they have to take what they can get. The government and the white real estate developers have left the working class people there, the locals, and especially the women, with very few options. At the same time, this legacy, this colonialism and the whiteness coming into Jamaica has passed on this colorism, this deep-rooted colorism that I talked about before, that leads to this self-hatred and this classification within the Jamaicans, and especially within the women, of their own worth and value based on the color of their skin. And all of this happening in Jamaica, which is so well described in this book, presents that island in itself as a character. It is, for these people, a homeland. It's where they're from, but it's also such a challenge and a struggle. And it's a contradiction because people come to Jamaica, people visit Jamaica as a place of paradise. And yet these people live there in poverty. In her second book, Patsy, Dennis-Benn presents us with the same kind of complicated, nuanced characters, specifically female characters. This book takes place in part in Jamaica. It also takes place in Brooklyn, New York. And this book is about the immigration experience. It's about sexuality, and in some ways it is about bodies. And thinking back on Here Comes the Sun, that is also a book about bodies and how people use their own bodies and how people's bodies are used and abused. Patsy, one of the main characters in this book, is a dark-skinned queer woman living in Jamaica. She has an administrative government job, but like a lot of women there, she is sexualized very early. She has no reproductive rights. She has no autonomy, in a sense, over her body. And part of this does come from that legacy of colonialism, the colorism. And in this book, Patsy travels from Jamaica to New York. And in New York, she is allowed to have more agency, more autonomy, and greater sexual freedom. But one of the twists that this book is showing you is that in being this undocumented immigrant, she has very limited options of what she can do. She becomes part of the caretaking class, and that is all she can do. She starts out working in restaurants, and then she ends up being a nanny and serving white people. And so you can see this coming up again, where it was happening in Here Comes the Sun in Jamaica. Now it is happening in Brooklyn, New York. At the start of the book, Patsy, who has a daughter named True, a young daughter, is leaving Jamaica. She's able to go to America, specifically to Brooklyn, New York, and she is leaving to be with this woman who she loves, Cecily. They were once very close. They were once lovers, and she believes that Cecily loves her back. Patsy's willing to leave everything behind to go be with Cecily and to live with her in this loving relationship. And that includes her daughter, True. So Patsy is following her dream of going to America, and her dream of being with this woman that she loves. She's filled with hope, and she realizes when she gets there that it's not going to be the way that she thought it was going to be. The Cecily that she meets is not the Cecily that she remembers. This is a woman who's married to an abusive man. This is a woman who's not interested in Patsy in the same way. And True, Patsy's daughter, ends up with her father, Roy, who she doesn't know. She's only lived with her mother. When Patsy leaves True, she tells her that she will be back. She'll be back soon for her, knowing that she will not be back at all. And this is really one of the heartbreaking pieces of this book. Patsy believes that the best way to leave True behind is really to cut all ties. She thinks that she's doing the best thing for True and the best thing for herself. And this act is really devastating for True because she believes that her mother's coming back. And so she feels nothing but abandoned, and she doesn't understand. In her leaving, the book says this, with much force, she severed all communication with her daughter, thinking it easier this way for both of them to move on. The absence of a mother is more dignified than the presence of a distant one. And this is something that Patsy has experience with because her own mother, Mama G, has abandoned Patsy for the Catholic Church. Patsy feels like she lost her mother when her mother put everything into this devout faith that she has So the story goes back and forth between True and her father and her brothers and her friends in Jamaica, and Patsy's experience in Brooklyn. She can't stay with Cecily. She has to move out. She ends up working in a restaurant. Then she ends up becoming a nanny. And 10 years go by and Patsy is still a nanny for multiple families. This is interesting because she is someone who has left behind her own child and now she's caring for children. When True is about 16, Patsy decides that she wants to send her something, and she sends her a barrel, which is something that people who immigrated to the United States would send back to their families, big barrels filled with all these kinds of gifts. So she buys this barrel and she has to find so much to fill it. And she is inclined to fill it with things that she thinks the True that she remembers from 10 years ago would like. She's with a female friend who helps her pick out things that are more appropriate for a 16-year-old girl. True, in these past 10 years, has been discovering that gender nonconformity is the place where she exists. She loves all things soccer. She has been playing soccer with her friends who are boys all her life. She wants to be a part of their team. This is not something that she is beaten for or abused for. The book is not really a coming out story for either for True or for Patsy. And True is supported by her friends. She's supported by her father, Roy. She looks at these boys playing soccer and she thinks, and this is a quote, she wants to play with them, but more than that, the quiet desire that rises up above all desires in the soundlessness, she wants to be them. And so this is who she starts to become. And when Patsy sends her this barrel, True opens it to find all these gifts, and she's so excited to be getting something from her mother and to feel like her mother remembers her. And inside, it's filled with all these very feminine, girly things. They could not be farther from anything that would interest True, that speaks to True at all. And in that moment, True understands that her mother doesn't know her at all. And she has just so wildly missed the mark. And this moment in this book, the whole book is so powerfully written, both of these books, but there are just these points that really kind of crack you open. And this is one where you just realize this is the act that breaks True. It's just really sad to see this final realization of the abandonment that True has experienced. And yet True and Patsy are in some ways on this same journey, this discovery towards their queer selves. Patsy realizes when she gets to the US that so much of who you get to be in a relationship with comes down to choice and whether or not you have it. And she made a choice to pursue her love, to come to the United States. And that choice shows us, the reader, the reality of immigration. And this gives us this close look at how these people who have had this dream and wanted to come here, come and experience hardship. They experience racism in this place that they've only ever wanted to get to. And then this idea of choice and how you get to choose who you could be with. One of Patsy's friends is a fellow immigrant and is getting married to a US citizen in order to get a green card. And she doesn't understand why Patsy doesn't want to do the same thing. Patsy says, well, I want to find a relationship for love. And that friend says, love is not something that we can afford. And the idea of choice at all is something that's run through Patsy's entire story, even going back to her time in Jamaica. And she hoped when she left that her choices would be different. Patsy suffers from depression, and there are moments that weigh really heavily on her. She realizes that choice is still going to be denied to her and to other women in the United States. And she realizes, and this is a quote, that's what it all comes down to, choice. When has she ever been given a choice? Never. She was never given the choice to say no the first time her legs were pried open. Never given a choice to rid her body of the grievance she had to carry for 9 months. Never given a choice to look at another woman and allow herself to be carried by the feeling without blood, bright red on glistening glass, sticking to her like shadow. And that point right there really underscores why it was so difficult for Patsy to be a mother. She had no choice in the matter. She didn't want to be a mother, and she didn't really feel a connection to her daughter in the way that she was told she should Part of this might come from her complicated relationship with her own mother, who she felt abandoned her. And it's rare to find a book, I think, that writes about this mother-daughter bond in such an honest way. A lot of times when you're reading a book about a bond between mothers and daughters, it is about their getting close and that bond. This book seems to be more about the absence of that maternal bond and the bond between mothers and daughters. This brings me around to the point that I started with about the characters in these books. Though that these characters make decisions and do things that you might question, Dennis-Benn has written them so carefully, and she's written them without judgment, and she's written them with compassion. And so that is how you read them. Nicole Dennis-Benn is very brave to write about these kind of topics that go ignored, and sort of the real honest truth and the not always so pretty parts of the way that people relate with each other. And so that is one of the reasons why I think you should read both of her novels, is just to read these characters, but also to read her writing, which is so well crafted. And I hope that you give these books a try. That is Here Comes the Sun and Patsy by the author Nicole Dennis-Benn. Thank you for joining me.